too often. I mean, we've had situations like this before. We should be more precise in the way we do things. Other countries are usually more precise in the way they handle such things. The kind of precision, for instance, that you have with military operations of, say, the United States of America will be as precise as to want to get somebody kidnapped in Nigeria by 7 Nigerian citizens, and they came in, took that guy out, neutralized 6 of the 7 civilians, or kidnappers, and told the 7th one, go and tell your people we've taken our man. And there was also another case some time ago. I'm not sure whether any country owned up to who did it, but there was somebody in Iran that needed to be dealt with. I'm being careful because I want to be sure if anybody...
You want to be precise yourself.
Yes. No, I want to avoid being too precise in this case. But the guy was neutralized himself and the only other person sitting with him in the vehicle. It was a convoy of vehicles, and nothing happened to the others. So our military operations should also be more precise. I had a major general saying, I can't remember the name now, but the designated officer to talk about it, saying that it was secondary bombing, that the targets were actually precise, but that perhaps some civilians had some explosive devices, whether fully set or to be packaged, and that those were the ones that eventually the impact of the original bombing went to affect. And then you have said it that members of the community are saying, no, that's not exactly the truth. Again, it's your word against the word of members of the community. But let me, just as I quickly remember now, correct an impression. In your introduction, you said the newly formed Lakurawa. Everybody by now, we have agreed that Lakurawa is not newly formed. Maybe they are newly felt. We are just feeling them.
Because the military
Lakurawa had
the
been
defense headquarters
around.
Talked about it just like a month ago or 2 months ago.
I may become more careful about believing the military forces in other things that they say. Once a premise can be established that one thing they said is actually not correct. Lakurawa has been around since about 2017, 2018. They have entrenched themselves into the system very well. I had a security expert talking about it, and thank God another security expert will still be discussing with us here today, that these people, that perhaps Lakurawa is a bastardized form of la recruit, which is a French word for anybody just brought into an army, and that their army is a ragtag one, and so they started calling them Lakurawa. But these people have entrenched themselves. They have studied the psyche of the Nigerians. They know we love money in Nigeria, that we can sell our souls, we can sell our conscience. I mean, that had always been since the days when our great-grandfathers sold our other great-grandfathers into slavery. And so what we now have is that the Lakurawa people give money to a few young, they can't even speak Hausa, they can't speak Fulani, they can't speak English, according to the reports that we're hearing. So they speak Pidgin French, okay? And so they get a few interpreters. They teach them a little bit of Pidgin French and then learn a little bit of, and these are the ones amongst the youths of those communities that are paid. And those ones are ready to offer their services to sell their country, to sell their communities, and now to sell their emirs. It's not the emirs that are selling the citizens anymore. So the sovereignty of those communities are being lost, according to reports that we are hearing. And so they are setting up a new tax regime, new government in all those places. So that cannot be done overnight. It's not newly formed. They are just getting more entrenched, and they are getting giving the military a better run for their hitherto preparations.
All right. Mr. Saka, I will ask almost the same question. What was your initial reaction when you saw this? Because one would naturally pan towards being a patriotic person to say, whatever the government of your country is telling you, and the institutions, are we not duty bound to believe that? as a patriotic person, the military have come to say we do what we do according to precision. And if anybody have been caught in the crossfire, it's just what it is. It wasn't an accidental thing. But then the federal government, in a kind of way, through the delegation led by the vice president, yesterday or the weekend, seemed to be like apologizing for what has happened and rather describe it as unfortunate. Same thing, Governor Aliyu said, this is unfortunate. Former Governor Tambola said, this must be investigated. Where do you stand in all of this?
Well, I want us to be very careful as Nigerians. And there's no way I would say this without coming out on the former President Muhammadu Buhari. And that is why Nigerians treat or probably, approach the military authorities with deep mistrust. First of all, when there was this Air Force bombing of IDP camp in Iran, that was obviously a mistake. Not even considered as a friendly fire. There was no investigation. Nobody was punished. Nigerians were not informed of the outcome of any investigation or political measures taken by the government on what have you. Yes, I want to say the military is under the National Secret Act, but they are being funded with taxpayers' money, and we need to know. Secondly, the bias or the perspective or the perception of the military operations under Muhammadu Buhari was biased, made Nigerians, very, skeptical or so unbelieving of the military. And I'll cite instances. For